Hey, good morning.
Good morning. So I think today will be a relatively short call, but an important one. It's time to assess where we're at and decide what we do for the remainder of the year. So I would love to get your opinions. Perhaps the first thing I'll do is just give a quick summary of the project overall. Well, first of all, we've had a lot of major conformance activity. The most recent major conformance is NEC, and we'll be announcing their conformance sometime in the next couple of weeks. They self-certified, and that's just fantastic. It's yet another multinational. At the same time as that, we've got multiple global certifiers. In fact, we had a very interesting certifier application the other day, just came in from China, the government agency CAICT, spin-off of the Ministry of Trade, has applied to become a certifier in mainland China. While it might seem strange for a government-affiliated organization to be a certifier, that's actually fairly normal in China, and the team there know what they're doing. The board will review their application and decide soon. Now, having global certifiers, and especially local certifiers in Japan and China, is great. But maybe the most important thing is that our self-certification questionnaire, which is in 12 languages, seems to be doing the right job. It seems to be helping companies self-certify. The single most important thing we've done on community editing has been the Security Assurance Reference Guide. The first version of that came out a little while ago. About a week ago, 2 weeks ago now, we had a mini summit where Mark took the lead on editing that and improving it for the second iteration. And I see Mark is here. First of all, thank you so much, Mark. That was above and beyond running that session. It was incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about the outcomes?
Well, first of all, it was a smaller group because the conference, was still the first time back from COVID. But what I found is it was a little bit of there was about a dozen people in the room and another 6 to 8, I guess, on the phone.
Yeah, about
that. And it was also a little bit of a diverse group. So I would say 3 or 4 of that dozen were new to it, and another 3 or 4 were very familiar with it. And so it was a little broad discussion, although I will say that 2 clear outcomes came out for the security guide, which is, it was a little bit more of an overview of OpenChain, SPDX, SBOM, right? And then there was the security guide discussion. As far as the security guide discussion, 2 things. People generally felt that it was the right first step, right? It was kind of the basic minimum we expect everybody to be doing. And in fact, if you go to a person in your supply chain and they're not doing these things, what the guide touches on, and basically you're checking for the known vulnerabilities, right? People felt that it should be expected of everybody who's delivering software into a supply chain that's pretty robust. So first thing is, I think we kind of reaffirmed that it's the right level. And then there were some suggestions on how we can take the next step of, for example, dealing with patches, right? And when a patch comes out, how we would actually provide additional guidance for that. The question really comes down to the next step. I think and then the other thing that came out of it is really the next step is to create additional visibility around the guide, because I'm not sure people really know how to view it, given that a lot of people come from license compliance. And so people have identified that there's 2 groups within companies often. There's your license compliance group and then your security group. And so one of the next things we probably want to do is find out how to best communicate these 2 things, these 2 documents, the spec and the guide, and how they complement each other and how they fit within an organization. I would say that was the takeaways.
That's really useful. And so I'm pending and overdue getting us a better page on the website and more prominent featuring. I'm looking at having us on the front page with the guide. Right now, we've got a highlighted interview. I'm thinking of putting the security assurance guide highlighted as a project outcome available on the front page, plus the improved dedicated page. This is good feedback. Visibility is something we can work on right away. The update thing on security is an interesting challenge. I guess that touches on things like IoT, smart infrastructure, and so on, where the devices can be in market for many years. So security is, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be able to work with our friends at Panasonic, Toshiba, Fujitsu, and so on, who have a deep level of experience in that kind of infrastructure. So,
yeah.
Right. So I'm overdue to send you some stuff, Mark, and I guess the FAQ is something we should get working on soon. Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that would be a very good, very next step. It's an FAQ, and I think part of that FAQ should again help people understand how these two fit together. In particular, the spec, the compliance spec is like this core foundational thing that in order to ship software, you got to comply with the licenses, otherwise you don't have the right to ship, right? And then the second step is where everybody's seeing a lot of interest, right? Is the ability around your open source to have security, and we have to just be able to tell how they complement each other and how they exist together. And I think the FAQ can do that.
All right. I'll take the action item and actually deliver on it this time to get that rolling.
I mean, I can also shoot you a half dozen or so questions that we can start with. I don't know if anybody here on the call, how familiar they are with Security Guide. I assume pretty much everybody here is very familiar with the core spec. The question would be, what questions do you have about this guide, and what questions might be good for an FAQ?
If you don't have something to mind right now, you can always do it after the call and let us know.
Yeah.
Now, maybe we'll zoom to the next participant, if that's okay, Mark. Again, thank you so much for the incredible work. I just wanted to let everyone know that the chair of our education work group is back. Balakrishna has been out for a while and has returned, and he's cooking up ideas for what we do next in education. Balakrishna, welcome.
Thank you, Shane. Hello, all. Sorry I was away for a long time. I was not keeping well. Now, as we had discussed previously, I think we have to resume with the web-based training rollout. So we will resume on that activity, and whatever comes forth from the technical implementation team on further modifications, I can take it up, Shane.
That will be great.
And discuss with them. So let's just start resume the channel with them, and then I can interact with them on a daily basis. And the new discussion what I and Shane were having last week is Shane suggested that we start with a new playbook kind of idea for open source compliance flow, which sounds really good. And now that even the security guide is part of it, of course, I'm still going through the security guide. I've not understood. So probably the FAQs which Mark Gizi would host, we can link that also onto playbooks. Does that sound good?
That does sound good. And by the way, if you hear loud panting, that's my dog. We're having a walk and she's really old.
No problem.
So maybe it'd be useful for me to explain the playbooks just a little bit. We had some community discussion on this, and we had a board meeting where we discussed this. Basically, we had quite a bit of feedback from the practical supply chain side, where customer companies were asking suppliers to do stuff. And the suppliers can see our spec and they can see our example information, but they don't have implementation. They don't know what to do with implementation. Now, we're very careful with the spec not to tell people, what they have to do in implementation. We don't tell them how to do it. We don't tell them the details of You must fill out the process this way. You must train people that way. We define the inflection points. But there is demand for some kind of reference material, very separate from the spec, which would be perhaps playbooks for small, medium, and large companies. And the playbook would be a full example workflow of a manager starting and saying, okay, how do I get going? And then making decisions as they go. And that's the basic suggestion we've had as a really useful tool moving forward. So these would be probably, imaginary company, X size, choosing how to implement OpenChain. And a disclaimer saying you don't have to do it this way. But in case you've got no idea where to start, here's an example of how someone might think through things. I just wanted to pause there and see if anyone has questions about that.
So I think the playbooks make sense. Just to emphasize, the intent of the spec was always, as you pointed out, not to be prescriptive, but to have a lot of us come along and write best practices on recommendations on the 3 different ways people might do that one particular task, right? So maybe for this playbook for workflows, I think that's a great place where a lot of people have questions about how does that fit inside your organization? How does it really work, right? So I think if you had the playbook included, say 3 different, I'm just making up a number, it could be 2, 3, 4 different workflows, like how different companies might do that. So it's not just a workflow, but it's several that they can compare against and give them that sense that, well, you have choices. So I would be happy to contribute to a workflow, when say, for example, we use, but of course there would be the need for others as well.
That's a really good. Sorry, go ahead. My apologies.
Sorry, Shane, I interrupted. Yes, that's actually a great idea, Mark and Shane. So what we can actually do is we can create a category per se, where we have first category as a startup who do not have in-house legal counsel and a scan team. So how they would perceive it, and in that we can have 2 subcategories where if they can afford a service, a paid service of open source activities, compliance activities, or security activities, then that would be one sub scenario. And another sub scenario would be like they do not have any resources and they do not have particularly investment set up for open source compliance. Then we give a simulation of how they could achieve the compliance at least to a 50 to 60% ratio using open source reference materials that are available and open source tools that are available, and how they can participate in the tooling groups and then manage it within their organization and not selling out much money, right? And then comes the next categories, where a mid-range company with the in-house counsel and outsourced counsel, and then a huge umbrella company like if we can simulate a company like Alphabet, then they have 40, 50 different subsidiary business companies, and they would have a central organization level policies, and then how it would be adopted with respect to their individual business or product line. We can give a simulation of all these line of workflows.
And I think it's also possible to quickly highlight the fact that within a large organization, you could have sub-organizations, as you referred to, but they each have their own slightly different workflow, right? And I've seen that actually. I've seen in a company where they have their core engineering product division, and then they have professional services. They each would have a different workflow within the same organization.
Yes.
So when you get to those really big ones, I wouldn't be surprised if you had multiple different ones.
Yes, that's very true, Mark. So Shane had also suggested in the past that we create simulation companies, and we break down the workflows with respect to those simulated companies. Probably we can initially have 3 major simulated companies: small, medium, big, and then further we can start breaking it down to their sub chunks on how they can possibly be interlinked, or how they would be possibly running business with respect to different product line they would have.
I noticed Yari's unmuted. Do you have a comment as well?
I started to just, because Balakrishna, you mentioned tooling, and they're like either open source or commercial products. I'm just like thinking that if we mention any of the commercial products, I don't know, it needs to be made in caution, or then we should mention all of them somehow.
Yes, yeah. So what we can to keep that at bay, what we can do is we can say, see, for open source tooling, there are certain groups which are working on listing out those are not difficult because they are all within a cluster. You find one cluster, you'll find the next node easily. But for commercial tools, we can rather say you can refer to certain magazines or websites for the tooling details, and we do not give out the details on the commercial tooling.
Yeah, makes sense.
We can mention a category rather, like there are commercial toolings with respect to security, and there are commercial toolings with respect to snippet scanning, commercial tooling with respect to artifact scanning, and then we are done.
Yeah.
I think this is going in a healthy direction. And to Mark's point, if we put all the playbooks in one playbook, it really does emphasize the message that while each playbook is basically a prescriptive set of actions undertaken by figure A, B, or C, the collected works are obviously different examples for different companies of different sizes. So it's just another part of the glue to help people think things through. So the playbooks sound like a fun thing to get started with. It's probably something we can flesh out piece by piece over time. Start them simple and build them out into more complex case studies of the decision workflow and the normative decisions taken. Balakrishna, it's really great to have you on board to help guide this effort. I know we're going to have a lot of fun with this.
By the way, what came to mind in your last comment, Shane, was we can come up with a simple principle that we can convey over and over again. One spec, multiple pathways, something like that.
Yes.
I think that's really important, because that's probably one of the biggest confusions. People read this and think, well, they're going to dictate to me how I do my thing, right? So one spec, multiple pathways, something like that.
That is exactly the phrase we should use. It's short, to the point. Yep. One spec, multiple pathways. Does everyone agree with that summary, that wording? I think that wording is good. We can translate that into every language. We got a thumbs up. It's all good. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Balakrishna. And now we have another item to touch on regarding automation. Tomorrow, Max and myself and Sebastian and Thomas are going to be talking through the graphical user interface Facebook and TNG created to use open source tools, with the optic being ORT. And as well as showing, on a deeper sense, how the graphical interface can manipulate ORT in a simple way, we're also going to have Sebastian and Thomas talking through the ORT internals. So it'll be a 2-in-1. Graphical user interface and simplicity, how it can do complex things easily, then plus deep dive into the full scope of what ORT can do. This is part of our ongoing automation case study, which runs until mid-December. We're going to do ORT and turn this month. And in the next month, we're going to expand into, a summary plus a whole virtual running supply chain. But I just wanted to call Max. I see he's on the line. Max, tomorrow's our big event. I'm going to start pushing it across our media channels and see who we can get on board. I just wanted to double check that everything's looking good on your end for our webinar tomorrow, and if there's anything you need.
I think there's everything good. There's still some last synchronization necessary with the ORT team, but yeah, we are on track. I hope I'm audible. I don't see the highlighting here. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. And we last preparations necessary, but we are on track.
Excellent. So for those who are not totally familiar with it, we're doing this rolling case study to truly highlight what open source tooling can do for open source compliance, and also truly highlight how with something like the tool from TNG and Facebook, it can be very simple to get started. Again, we're trying to lower the barrier to entry and increase the understanding. The case study has, well, let me count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts across these months. And each part, as it's happening, is made into a recording. And of course, there'll be a special dedicated page with all of these case studies available where you can point your customer companies or your teams to get massively educated. Now, that is automation, that is playbooks, that is the security reference guide, and that is also a note on continuation of how we do the training material around education. The question is, in this quarter of 2021, is there anything else that we should put special emphasis on to make OpenChain more successful? So I'm just going to pause here to give people a chance to think and to comment. So far, everyone's like, yeah, it's fine. That's enough for me. Okay. If that's it for the major community items that we're doing, I guess the next thing we'll touch on is increased community translation. Minoji-san just posted in the chat that he is going to talk with the Japan team about translation. So that's very good. Some more notes from Minoji-san. Right. So the Japan work group is interested in training material for contractors. The playbooks may be useful for that, absolutely. Balakrishna concurs. Minoji-san wants the schedule for tomorrow's meeting. Yes, of course. It's in the global calendar with all of the dial-in details. But in short, it takes place at 8 a.m. UTC. So that's going to be 9 in the UK, 10 in Europe. It's going to be 4 p.m. in China and 5 p.m. in, where are we? Japan. Japan and Korea. So that's
as a side note, I have in my global calendar, I don't see that meeting scheduled.
Okay, I will make sure that the scheduling is working. So I will dig into that and see what might be wrong there.
Yeah, same here. I don't see it in the global calendar or in my calendar, which is synced with the global calendar.
Alrighty, I'm going to take the action item just after this call to make sure that is fixed and to re-highlight the event to the community so that everyone is aware. Okay. And now we are on to any other business. If there's no other business, I just want to thank all of you for being on board for this summary. I think it's important to be clear on where we're strategically executing as a community so that we know where to put our energy. I do hope to see many of you tomorrow at the tooling event. The global calendar should be fixed online and available in a few minutes, and I will make sure to mail the lists so everyone is fully informed. Thank you. Have a great day. Stay safe and talk to you soon.
Thank you, Shane. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay, bye.
Bye.